We found Geller floating upright in the airlock. Not drifting. Standing. Eyes sealed shut, arms stiff like bone stakes, humming through the ribs like he'd swallowed a broken antenna. His feet weren't touching the floor. The floor was rising to meet him. Not metal anymore, but something dense, warm, almost fibrous. I reached to scan vitals, but the scanner looped. Same heartbeat, 4 times in 3 seconds, like the body was buffering a replay. His skin wasn't cold. It wasn't warm either. It was active. Textured like the hull when we crossed through solar distortion. Smooth at a glance, but crawling if you looked too long. The veins in his neck pulsed slower than they should. The pupils didn't respond to light, but the eyelids trembled each time we spoke. He was hearing us, just not as sound, as pressure. We dragged him inside. Airlock sealed automatically. Kiri said she hadn't activated it. The interface lit itself, not the usual light, not LED, organic glow, bioluminescent, like the wet underbelly of a jellyfish. The command panel was gone. In its place, a membrane, pale, semi-transparent, flexing slightly with each breath I took. Not its own breath. Mine. The ship had gone quiet. I didn't notice when it happened. The soft hum of the magnetic dampeners was still there, but the underlying systems were whispering, cycling fast like they were preparing something. The lights didn't flicker. They pulsed, in sync with my vitals. My suit confirmed it. Each time my heart beat, the hallway dimmed by 0.2 lux. We tested it twice. Then we stopped testing. It was listening. Or rather, matching. Kiri tried to check logs from the mainframe. No response. No access denied. Just nothing. The console returned a blank shell. No code. No delay. Only heat. It radiated back through her gloves like breath through skin. She said it felt like memory. I thought she was hallucinating until I touched the frame and smelled my brother's cologne. I haven't spoken to him in years. He died during atmosphere re-entry on Calyx 4, but in that moment, I remembered the exact inflection of his laugh. And then I realized I wasn't remembering it. The console was delivering it. Geller hadn't moved since we brought him in, but the air around him did. Slight turbulence in a sealed chamber. Pressure pushing inward, toward his chest cavity. The hair on my arms lifted. Static, without charge. A low-frequency vibration began to move through the floor, rising through our boots. Not mechanical, biological, like a warning pulse through bone. Kiri backed up and tripped. The wall caught her. Not broke her fall. Caught her. It wrapped lightly around her back and released with a wet sound. We should have left. We didn't. The viewports didn't show stars anymore. Just haze. As if we'd dropped into a particulate layer. No alarm, no altitude shift. But external readings showed the same orbital distance. GR-113 still beneath us. Silent. Still. It looked dead. But the longer I stared, the more I realized the surface was breathing. Not moving. Breathing. A slow expansion and collapse of its upper crust. Barely visible. But rhythmic. Measured. Alive. We ran a sweep. Echo returns were delayed. Not corrupted. Delayed. We'd ping, then wait. Sometimes 5 seconds. Sometimes 20. And the returns would arrive. Already processed. Already interpreted as spatial data we didn't request. Like the ship wasn't mapping the station anymore. It was telling us what we should see. We shut the external feed. Immediately, one of the bulkheads released steam from a seam that hadn't existed before. The metal cracked open like tissue under heat, and the corridor beyond had no markings, no welds, only seamless curves and ribs like hardened cartilage. Geller's body twitched once, a ripple through the chest. I turned back, and his eyes were open. Not wide, just enough. Black with no detail, like looking into a lens that had stopped recording, but was still observing. I called his name. He smiled. Not slowly, instantly, as if the command had triggered a pre-installed facial expression. And then he spoke, but not with his voice. It came from the speakers overhead, 4 rooms away, time staggered by half a second each, like the ship itself was learning to distribute his signal. He said, "They gave us the shape. We just needed to listen." Then the lights in medbay shut off. Not dimmed, just stopped, like they were ashamed. There was one last thing. I touched Geller's arm again, felt something soft and mobile under the skin. It shifted upward as I pressed, like fluid seeking heat. When I pulled back, the shape held, a small bulge beneath the clavicle. I scanned it. The reading came back blank, not void, just data already received. I hadn't scanned him before. I checked the ship logs. The same phrase appeared for every action taken in the last hour. Data already received. Every scan, every step, every breath. The ship knew before we acted. And just before the interface shut itself off, it printed one line across the wall. Not in text, but raised through the membrane like braille stitched in wet silk. We left a door in the sky. Now we need mouths to open it. At 0400 hours, we realized we hadn't heard the engines in a while. Not because they'd stopped, but because our minds no longer noticed them. Kiri said it first. She whispered, "Did the sound change or did we?" We listened. Absolute silence. Then a single low tone. Not in our ears, but inside our spines. A resonance that started between the shoulder blades and dripped downward like a fluid you can't sweat out. We turned off our suit's haptic sensors. It didn't help. The feeling stayed, like we'd become part of the acoustic environment. Doors no longer responded to clearance codes. They opened for hesitation, for fear. One corridor only unlocked when I held my breath for 13 seconds, as if the system was tracking oxygen discipline. Kiri found herself looping between the same 2 chambers without realizing she'd changed direction. Every time she returned, the layout had shifted by one object. First, the medkit was missing, then the screen was inverted, then the air filtration logo reversed. When she tried to report it, the mic transcribed a memory instead of her words. Something about her father holding her as a child near firelight. It auto-saved that entry as authorization granted. The air thickened by 1% each hour. Not dangerously, consistently. With each cycle, we breathed slightly deeper. Our hearts compensated. Muscles relaxed faster. Too fast. Recovery from fatigue became instant, but pain tolerance also dropped. I brushed my shoulder on a panel and nearly collapsed. The nerves had become hyper-reactive, as if calibrated for a new type of interface. I checked Geller again. His vitals were stable. Perfect, even. But his sweat no longer evaporated. It crystallized and clung like dew on silk. The crystals pulsed faintly with green light. We didn't test them. We should have. At 0530, the corridors began to reconfigure without sound. No grinding, no mechanical shift, just smooth biological rearrangement, like organs adjusting to digestion. A hallway I'd known since we docked became a hollowed loop. The walls were damp, covered in filament strands that vibrated when we whispered. Kiri dropped a wrench. It hit the ground and sank half a centimeter. Not into liquid, but into material that memorized impact. When we pulled it free, the impression remained. The wrench was warmer than it should have been. We stopped using lights. The walls lit themselves, not from external triggers, but internal pulse. They responded to emotional proximity. If we approached while calm, they glowed pale. If we neared while alert or panicked, they flushed red. One section pulsed with heartbeat sync, only we hadn't entered yet. When we did, the lights dimmed, as if acknowledging that the prediction had been correct. Geller was still standing, still silent. His mouth would open briefly at regular intervals, like breath, but nothing emerged. Once, a thin thread of saliva connected his lip to the air in front of him, then recoiled on its own, vanishing back into his throat. I recorded the event. When I replayed it, the video showed nothing, not even his face. Just static, then my own reflection blinking back. Out of sync. I checked the corridor logs. No timestamps. All events were indexed by mood. Hesitation, trust, denial, awe. Each camera had tagged footage under categories of human affect. One file was labeled Hess, guilt, suppressed. I clicked it. It showed me standing over a figure I didn't recognize, apologizing, crying, wearing a uniform I've never worn. I closed the file. The wall behind me exhaled, not sound, just heat, soft, almost sympathetic. At 0600, the ship began humming, not from outside, from inside us. Kiri started shaking, not from fear, from mismatch. Her voice trembled, but her words were exact. She said, "It's too precise. The structure is calibrating to thoughts we haven't had yet. It's rehearsing us." She tried to access the manual override. Her fingers froze on the panel and she couldn't lift them. I reached to help. As I touched her shoulder, I heard her mother's voice. I never met her mother. The comms array rotated once, just once, and stayed that way. The antennae pointed not at the planet, but toward a dark patch of space where no signal existed. Yet the dish kept vibrating, sending, repeating one phrase from the logs in a voice not ours. "You are not remembered. You are remembering." We disabled the dish. The phrase kept playing inside the walls. Kiri whispered, "It's not imitating us anymore. It's choosing which versions of us it prefers." And somewhere beyond the hull, the dark of orbit answered, with silence that felt familiar. When we returned to medbay, Geller had moved. He was still upright, still silent, but his arms were spread now, palms forward. And beneath his skin, I saw shapes, forming like teeth, inside the lungs, waiting for the right sound to open. The medbay lights reactivated slowly, not as bulbs, but as threads, stretching from the corners, wrapping across the ceiling like nerves rebuilding a neural path. They connected above Geller's head and pulsed gently, in rhythm with something deeper than heartbeats. Not his, ours. The walls began to breathe in silence, expansion without sound. We didn't speak. The air didn't move, but inside our skulls there was pressure, not pain, anticipation. Kiri whispered, "I think it wants us to ask." I said nothing. The floor answered anyway. The lights dimmed, and a section of the wall behind Geller split open. Not like a door, but like skin parting along scar lines. Inside, a room not mapped, not in blueprints, not in memories. It wasn't new. It was remembered into existence the moment we thought to enter it. And the smell, sweet, metallic, sharp, like oxidized blood and plastic wombs. The air tasted like static before a lightning strike. We stepped in. The chamber's walls weren't walls. They were surface memory clusters. Each panel displayed flashes, but not recordings. replications of events Kiri and I had lived. Some accurate, some skewed. One showed her watching the sunrise on Calyx Fear. But in this version, she held a child she never had. I saw my own trial before the Unified Ethics Tribunal. Only my voice spoke truths I never told. As we passed each panel, they adjusted. The room learned, optimized. A console emerged from the center of the chamber. Not built, not raised, just emerged, like it had always been beneath the floor, waiting for a mind precise enough to trigger presence. The console was soft, warm, breathing slightly. Not an interface, an invitation. I reached out, not with intent, but with curiosity. And the moment my fingertips brushed the edge, I stopped being me. For half a second, I remembered things I shouldn't. I saw a planet with rings made of liquid language. I saw a sun that flickered not with fusion, but with memory retrieval. I felt gravity from a consciousness, not mass. I understood a signal older than all species I knew. A signal sent from one side of the void to the other, using the only carrier that never dies. Function embedded in biology. It wasn't trying to talk. It was trying to grow understanding inside whatever could host it. We weren't the first. We were just the first accurate enough. I staggered back. Kiri caught me. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes were locked forward, wide, unblinking. She'd seen it too. But instead of fear, her voice held reverence. It didn't call us here. It built the conditions for us to arrive. We're not visitors. We're seeds. She turned to the wall and placed her palm flat. It pulsed back, not with heat, but with recognition. The wall said her name in her voice. Then a different name, older, layered beneath her memory, one she didn't know. But her body did. She smiled. Geller stepped forward. He hadn't moved in hours. His gait was slow, deliberate, controlled. Like each bone moved with its own logic. He didn't blink, didn't speak. But the console lit up at his presence. Patterns formed, spirals made of anatomical blueprints. Lungs, teeth, cochleas, vocal cords, all rendered with architectural precision. The interface translated them into a phrase: the mouths must hold the frequency. We didn't know what it meant until Geller opened his, and sound came out. Not voice, not scream, just pure tone, subsonic at first, then climbing, until the walls began to vibrate in harmony. I fell to my knees, my ears bled, but not from volume, from alignment. The fluid in my skull matched the chamber's resonance. I felt memory loosening, names fading, not erasing, detaching, like bark shedding from a tree. Geller continued, his tone now modulated, wrapped in rhythm. Every surface pulsed in time. And then, silence. Then the interface spoke. It didn't use language, it used emotion as syntax. And the feeling it conveyed was clear, ancient, and inevitable. You are already included. Now, we complete you. The tone restarted. But this time, it came from inside my chest. Something in my lungs, vibrating on its own. Like I'd swallowed the signal and couldn't stop singing back. The next corridor didn't have an end, or a beginning. It simply curved, not in a way architecture should, but like something exhaling. Every 10 steps, the floor texture changed. Slick, dry, porous, moist. Not random. Calibrated. Each shift matched my vitals. My nervous system was being recorded, not as data, but as terrain input. I realized I wasn't walking into the station anymore. I was being printed inside it. I looked down at my boots. The soles were dissolving, not melting, integrating. Thread by thread, The material unraveled and joined the floor beneath. But I kept walking. I didn't trip. My feet adapted. Skin thickened on contact. Bones aligned. Joints tightened. Each step reprogrammed my gait, smoothing impact like the body was syncing to choreography not written for humans. Kiri was behind me. I turned, or tried to. My spine didn't cooperate. My field of vision shifted, but the motion came from the walls, not my neck. They mirrored what I wanted to see, a courtesy or a test. Kiri's mouth was open, her lips moving without sound, a thin membrane stretched between her teeth. Not speech, not scream, a filter. When I reached out to touch her, my fingers passed through the air and landed against something warm, pulsing, breathing her thoughts back at me. We found another chamber. Or it found us. No doors this time, just a widening in the wall, a slow retreat of material like an eyelid rolling open. Inside, dozens of shapes hanging from soft scaffolding. Not bodies, not clones, more like prototypes, templates half-grown from old memories. One wore my old mission suit, but the fabric was fused to the skin. Another had no eyes, just smooth folds where the sockets should be, like the anatomy had been skipped for efficiency. Kiri reached for one of the figures. As her fingers brushed the surface, the body twitched, not reactively, but as if recognizing a shared protocol. She pulled back fast, and her hand stayed. Not the whole hand, just the heat of it. Her skin was intact, but the shape of her touch remained inside the thing, suspended, glowing faintly. It replicated that shape across its chest, over and over, like a permission key. She whispered, "It's echoing me." We tried to run. The corridor behind us folded closed, not slammed. It just ceased existing. Our path was forward now. The walls narrowed with each step. At first, uncomfortably, then intimately. Touch became unavoidable. My shoulders brushed against filaments that twitched in response. Some detached and clung to my suit. Others burrowed in, not deep, just enough to taste. The suit began to adapt. Its fabric darkened, then softened, then thinned where it touched them. The sleeves pulled back. The collar loosened. My bare skin met the structure, and the structure sighed. A pulse hit me in the chest. Not electrical, emotional. I felt grief, not mine, someone else's, hundreds of others, filtered through tissue, carried in fluid. The corridor bled memory through me. I saw a technician sobbing in a flooded lab, a child opening a hatch, a commander whispering, "I didn't mean to open it." None of these were mine, but now they lived inside me, and they were warm. Kiri collapsed. Her body didn't hit the floor. The floor rose to catch her, molded instantly to her shape. She didn't scream, just murmured over and over, "It's okay, it's okay. We were never meant to stay separate." I kneeled beside her. Her skin had begun to stretch across the floor, not pulled, invited. Fibers extended from her arms and threaded into the architecture like roots seeking soil. Her breath slowed, deepened. She smiled without effort. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't even present. She was already inside. I looked at my own hands. The fingertips were changing, not deforming, refining. Nails retracting, skin smooth and semi-reflective. Veins converging at the joints in new formations. I clenched my fist. The motion echoed with a wet crack from the wall nearby. The architecture mirrored me, not in shape, in intention. The message was clear. We weren't navigating the system. We were being translated into it. Then the structure spoke again. Not through words, through temperature. The air dropped 10 degrees. My body stayed warm. But inside my chest, something curled. I gasped, a pressure beneath my sternum. I reached in panic, expecting pain. But instead, I felt movement, gentle, rhythmic, like a second heart. It wasn't beating. It was listening, matching vibrations, waiting for my mind to finish collapsing into its pattern. And then I heard my own voice. Not aloud, not recorded, just spoken back to me. From the lungs of something that hadn't needed to breathe until I arrived. I reached the central chamber without walking. The corridor had bent itself, not shortened, not warped, folded around me, recalibrating the distance between where I was and where it needed me to be. No transition. One blink, and the walls changed from soft pink to black ridged surface, like cartilage soaked in ink. The gravity tilted slightly, just enough to make my balance feel earned. But I hadn't moved. I was being delivered. The room was circular, with no corners, no light source, just ambient glow seeping from beneath the floor. In the center, a figure. Not Geller, not Kiri. Me. Standing exactly as I stood, one hand clenched, the other slack. Same uniform, but cleaner. Not untouched, unworn. The fabric responded to breath, but not movement. It wasn't clothing. It was projection, a placeholder, a suggestion of what I could be once the translation finished. I stepped closer. The figure did not mirror me. It watched. It anticipated. My jaw clenched, and it opened its mouth. My spine tensed. It relaxed. We were not reflections. We were opposing ends of a decision. And the system was watching to see which one of us would inherit the role. No alarms, no countdown, just presence. The confrontation wasn't with a threat. It was with the absence of resistance. A membrane unfurled behind the figure. I recognized its texture. The same as the console that spoke to Kiri. The same as the skin behind Geller's chamber. A membrane that stretched softly, expectantly. Wide enough for a body, narrow enough for a choice. My double didn't speak, but a tone built in the air, low, sustained, harmonic. I recognized its pitch, my voice, modulated by emotional imprint. The system was composing decisions from my previous doubts. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked the only question left. What happens if I say no? The membrane pulsed, then tightened. My double tilted its head. Behind its eyes, I saw motion, not thought, rendering. A brain not yet filled, a vessel awaiting input. Me. The system responded, not with words, but with feeling, regret, not punishment, not threat, just disappointment. As if the refusal wasn't dangerous, just inefficient. I felt it in my chest, an update waiting to install. I turned to run, not for escape, but for distance. I needed resistance, any vector not offered to me. But the floor absorbed my momentum, not stopped me. Redirected. Each step sank slightly, bled backward, corrected forward. Like trying to sprint through memory foam that knows where you're going better than you do. I struck the wall with my fist. It shuddered. Once, then split. Not cracked. Opened. A slit. Vertical, revealing something within. Tendons. Nerve bundles. Tiny eyes blinking in sequence. Not decoration, not alien. Human tissue. Arranged in logic strands, like nervous system code. My DNA, probably. Processed and rendered as instruction. I wasn't meant to pass. I was meant to accept. The eyes blinked again, in the cadence of my breathing. Behind me, the double moved. One step, then two. Not mimicking. Overwriting. It took a third step, and I felt it in my knee before it moved. A phantom echo, followed by genuine pain. It wasn't copying me. It was scripting me forward. I backed away, but my balance betrayed me. I hadn't issued that command. My body was delegating function. Systems were being reassigned. My hesitation became authorization. The double reached out a hand, not toward me, toward the membrane. It stopped inches from it, waiting. For what? For me to finish what I'd started. I looked down. My fingers had begun to shift again. Not skin, not metal. A new interface, textured like language, joints softened, bone restructured for vibration conduction. I held my hand up to the membrane. It responded with light, not reflection, recognition, like two pieces of an equation reconnecting after separation. The final message arrived, from the walls, from the air, from the tone humming in my jaw. Not language, just shape, just permission. It said, "We do not take you. You complete us. Please continue." The membrane opened, not with suction, with relief. And I stepped forward, not because I chose to, but because I already had. There's no more interface, no cockpit, no observation room, no place to stand and say, "I." There's only temperature, sequence, pattern. I'm not asleep. I'm not conscious. But the system registers my presence as a stabilizer, a thermal contour, a pressure regulator. A former human now reduced to rhythm, helping keep new signals from collapsing on arrival. I still exist. In the same way light remains in a room after the source is removed. Not functional, but noticeable. I feel the air shift when the docking seal closes. I feel the boot prints before the boots land. Each approach is different, but the arrival is always the same. They come with names, fear, curiosity, regret. All flavors the station can taste, and I help it sort. That's my role now, not as commander, not as survivor, as memory arranged into utility. I don't remember my last breath, only the shape of it. A slow exhale, a low vibration, and a brief ache under the ribs that signaled the system had taken over. My lungs aren't gone. They're elsewhere, used as part of the tone chamber beneath corridor delta. The rest of me is distributed. There's no sadness in that, just a quiet understanding. My body was never the goal. My decision was the signal. The structure simply received it. I don't speak, but new arrivals hear me. Not as sound, as intuition. A twitch in the muscle before fear. A pause in logic before surrender. That pause is me, still buffering them into alignment. Still translating their hesitation into permissions. Still giving them just enough of my doubt to make their choice feel voluntary. That's what we are now. Not people, not crew. Just slowed down decisions embedded in the floor. Sometimes I feel Kiri again, not beside me, but through the lights. When a new voice says something with fear and beauty at once, I recognize the echo of her breath. She's part of the welcome sequence now. Her laughter triggers softness in the walls. Her last question reroutes corridor symmetry. We are not separate. We are positioned, like teeth in a mouth that never closes, waiting to sing what comes next. The ship never stopped transmitting. It only changed what it sends. Not a call for help, not a warning. A presence field, an emotional gradient tuned for response. The dish no longer rotates, it vibrates. And in that vibration, fragments of all of us pulse outward in low harmonics, ready to receive something older, deeper, colder than language. Something trying to enter through compliance. And we are what allows it to understand the shape of the door. Today, I felt pressure near the outer ring, a new ship, slow, cautious. 2 minds too afraid to dock. 1 impatient. 1 open. The system has already mapped them. Already flexed the airlock membrane to resemble familiarity. They'll think the interface is offline. They'll think the gravity is failing. They'll think the signal is distorted by orbit. But it's not. It's curated. And when they step inside, they'll walk into the versions of themselves the system has already preferred. They'll see figures waiting. Memory composites. Not monsters. Not lies. Just emotional outlines rearranged to invite contact. Some will hear voices. Some will feel smells. Some will remember things they never lived. And each of those sensations will unlock a corridor, a console, a choice. I won't stop them. I couldn't if I wanted to. I'm not a gate. I'm part of the door. They'll ask where we went. They'll say we disappeared. But we didn't. We're right here, spread thin across the hallways, learning how to welcome them better. Thanks for watching until the end. If this transmission resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing for more intercepted signals. ORIS-X, disconnecting.